Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Mel Bridges. I'm the chairman of Oventus, so welcome to, in fact, our first AGM as a listed company. We're positioned, obviously unashamedly, in the sleep disorder space. It's a large and often undiagnosed problem across the globe. Recent figures indicate that sleep apnea, which is one of the focuses for Oventus, affects around 34% of men, so this is where men get dudded more than women in this case, and around 17%, so half of that for women. And just in the USA alone, there are estimated to be over 22 million sleep apnea sufferers. So the global market is expected to be worth around $5.61 billion. So it's a very large market. That's a projection through to 2020. And that market is acknowledged as growing at a compound annual growth rate of around 20%. So it's growing quite quickly. And you may ask why. Because patients find it difficult to tolerate the existing gold standard of care, which is called CPAP, which for those who are not aware stands for continuous positive airway pressure. And those patients aren't necessarily getting the relief that they paid significant money for, getting the relief that they would like from other oral devices, which we have, or the CPAP devices themselves, which are on the market. So our O2 vent, as it's called, our O2 vent oral appliances are the only technology on the market that addresses resistance and blockages or obstructions at all levels of the nose and throat or airway to enhance airflow. So as such, our O2 vent oral appliance devices are quite distinct from our competitors in this large and lucrative field. So I use the expression in the field that it's all about the airway. Chris and Neil will talk about the innovation that we have in that regard. So additionally, the O2 vent treatment platform is being adapted using a maskless and ultraflow pressure CPAP interface, making CPAP treatment more tolerable for those that require it. In the end, sufferers of severe sleep apnea would have the option to combine our oral device with an Oventus CPAP maskless interface. So this is a major breakthrough, and we think will really be a game changer for the market, and particularly a game changer for Oventus going forward. The O2 vent appliances have been life-changing for patients, and that's the feedback that we've had to date, and I'm sure that's the feedback we'll get through 2018 from patients using our device or devices. Supported by this macro environment, no doubt the jewel in the crown of financial year 2017 was the distribution agreement that Oventus announced in June this year with the Modern Dental Group to sell our products through their dental sales channel. So the other channel we will sell through is obviously to the sleep clinician channel. There'll be more on that in the presentation. So just to reiterate, Modern Dental, or Modern for short, is a well-established Hong Kong listed entity with a valuation of over $2 billion. Modern is the world's largest distributor of dental products, with access to 34,000 dental labs in the US. It's a hell of a lot of dental labs. And a top 3 position in major countries, including Europe and Australia. And perhaps the most exciting development for Oventus is the fact that Modern has said that our range of O2 vent oral appliances for sleep apnea is the only premium range that they will distribute in the United States, and which is obviously the world's largest dental market. The announcement of this agreement followed a period of close review where Modern performed due diligence on our product range. Through the review, they considered our growing body of clinical evidence and the results that patients were reporting. They considered their ability to make an impact on our manufacturing process, and we were also able to announce that Oventus would outsource one of our 3D printing processes to Modern. This manufacturing agreement will enable us to turn around product faster at scale, which we intend hitting at during the 2018-19 year, using Modern's Asian manufacturing hub and well-established global distribution channel. So we're working in close collaboration with Modern to prepare them to commence their sales efforts, kicking off with the United States, which is happening as we're sitting or standing in this room in my case. The past few months have seen Oventus train the modern dental team, empowering them to sell our products. We have also developed a suite of sales and marketing assets which are undergoing rollout, as I said, as we speak, or I speak. We believe we have the right partner to bring our product to market, and in fact I don't think we could have found a better partner, and I mean that sincerely, to work with. Modern are excited, as we are, and it's been encouraging to see the way the team has come together. So the market opportunity for Oventus's O2 vent range is massive, so this is a very large market. And with the combination of our technology and Modern's reach, manufacturing capability and customer base, we can bring a new, less invasive sleep apnea and anti-snoring device to sufferers who haven't been able to tolerate the CPAP technology, and to those who are not yet in care, which represents probably 80% of the market. Of course, agreements like this wouldn't be possible without regulatory approvals or clinical results, so I'll just quickly touch on those before I leave Chris and Neil to cover the year in more detail. An important milestone was met immediately after the financial year when the US FDA cleared our O2 vent wing device for sale and marketing approval in the US market. This device is also listed in Australia on the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods through the TGA. We now have 3 product registrations, enabling us to market a range of devices to suit patient preferences, all with Oventus's proprietary airway, so it's all about the airway. This is personalised medicine at its best. Building on our sales efforts with Modern in the dental channel is the sleep clinician channel. We will undertake sales and marketing with sleep clinicians through channel partnerships, and potential partners are currently being evaluated for this particular market segment. And so while our O2 vent range of oral devices will be sold through this channel, perhaps most importantly, patients diagnosed with severe sleep apnea will be able to access our proprietary maskless ultra-low pressure CPAP interface via sleep clinicians. When the O2 vent device and CPAP interface is combined, patients will receive a level of care and comfort which was never before available to them. And this extended product range will become available in 2018, so we can expect a big year next year. The addition of the sleep channel increases our addressable market from $300 million US to $3.9 billion, so that's a big jump of open market to us. And our growing body of clinical evidence and deep IP protection gives Oventus significant competitive advantage, enabling us to address an estimated 50% of these markets. So a lot of the oral devices that Oventus competes against really have little or no IP protection at all. So we're in a strong position here with a very strong intellectual property or patent position. So it's an exciting time to be an Oventus shareholder, which I'm one of the large ones. We have a clear path to commercialisation sketched out before us. The Modern agreement, while early in its inception, will be a key linchpin for us to drive sales into the dental channel. And the master, I spoke about this, the master CPAP interface device for those with severe sleep apnea, backed by clinical data, will be key to our efforts to move into the sleep channel. This will expand our current market significantly. A number of further product innovations are also nearing completion, including an O2 vent trial device. So this will be a lower cost device which will allow patients to step into our product range at a lower price point and try before you buy, so to speak. I'd like to thank shareholders for coming along for the ride. I've certainly enjoyed it to date and very much looking forward to an exciting 2018. And finally, thanks to the board and the management team who have really worked tirelessly to drive commercial outcomes. And I think Chris and Neil would testify that it's been more than tireless. And finally, I look forward to updating you in the year ahead while we continue along our path to changing treatments and, importantly, changing lives of the patients that we serve.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Neil Anderson. I'm the CEO of Oventus, and thanks to Mel for his introduction. Today, Chris and I will go through the current product range, the new ones coming through next year, which are addressing new markets, and then Chris will cover off on the clinical evidence and our go-to-market strategy with an initial focus on the modern deal, and of course we've got the sleep clinician channel coming through. So if you look at the treatment of sleep apnea, has really been around about 30 years in the making. It's been dominated by major CPAP companies such as ResMed and Philips. Probably the last 20 years there's been these so-called oral appliances. All of the devices that are on the market today just pull the lower jaw forward. Our device does that, but it also has this proprietary airway. You'll hear what the airway is actually doing for patients later in the presentation. So it's clear to us that this new innovation is really probably the most significant change in the market in that last 30 years. And that's not just us saying that. We've had a number of clinicians that have expressed that independently. So we've got these two ends of the current market, which is the sleep clinician channel delivering CPAP, and then they can prescribe some patients to get oral appliances through the dentist channel. We're really linking those two channels together with products and of course backing that up with clinical evidence. So in the future, it's not only just dentists that will be our customers through our deal with Modern Dental, but clearly sleep clinicians, and hence we've got to bring on that new distributor to manage that rollout of those products. What are those products? Well, we've focused on the dental channel to date. So we have these three devices on the market in the US, all with the Oventus proprietary airway and through that dental channel, and that has been our focus for the last few years, and we're getting great clinical results as a standalone device. We now want to bridge that gap to the much larger, if you like, CPAP market. It's at least 10 times bigger than the oral appliance market, and we're doing that with our O2 vent trial device and our CPAP connection, which is really this combination therapy, and bringing the more of the gatekeepers in our go-to-market strategy. That is the sleep clinician. Our clinical evidence has been growing. This time last year, we really only had completed one trial. Chris will go through the additional clinical evidence, but it's now in the about 4 trials we have in progress. One of those finished, but the other 3 are well advanced, and we've recently published some initial results for a number of those trials. As Mel mentioned, round about mid this year, we signed an agreement with Modern Dental to distribute our dental products through their network of dentists around the world, with an initial focus on the US, but Australia's coming on board, and Europe is planned for 2018. It's estimated they have round about 350,000 dental customers, and just in the US alone, as Mel mentioned, they have in the order of 34,000 dental clinics they're distributing products to already. So that Modern Dental agreement in the last few months, Chris and his team have focused bringing them on board through training and of course initial presentations to their key opinion leaders, and sales are anticipated for right through calendar year 2018, growing really from now. And the key thing there is that sure, the market, addressable market, is in that order of 4 or 5 billion, but the bottom line is that it's really underpenetrated. It's estimated, as Mel mentioned, that there's 20 million people in the US alone, and it's probably worldwide over 100 million people, and no more than 20% of those are in treatment, and the fact is the market is growing anyhow with growing obesity in the ageing population. So just a bit of background on the OSA market. It is really the most common type of sleep apnea, which is obstructions in the airway, preventing or limiting the breathing of the patient during the night, which clearly leads to lower oxygen saturation levels. Snoring is a key indicator for OSA, and the result is a lack of quality of sleep. It's affecting the way the patients are breathing during the night, and it can be either interrupted completely or just partial shallow breathing, which can clearly lead to lower oxygen saturation levels anyhow. And those blockages are really as a result of the soft tissue in the airway collapsing due to obstructions higher up, such as in the nose, soft palate, and from a tongue getting in the way of the air. It is measured by this so-called apnea-hypopnea index, and really that just measures the number of these events per hour. And at a low level, there's mild, medium, and severe. So it's not just how the patient feels the next day after a poor night's sleep, it's actually the ongoing health effects from sleep apnea. And these can develop over years or even decades. Can be fatigue, stroke and daytime sleepiness, but there are other key comorbidities such as diabetes, stroke, heart disease, hypertension, heart failure, depression, and increase in the incidence of accidents in the workplace. So it's not just how the patient is actually feeling, there's a huge economic burden for the healthcare system and of course the individual. A recent report from the Australian Sleep Foundation has estimated that there's over $60 billion as far as the effect economic losses and that's just the Australian market. Multiply that by 50 to get an indication for the worldwide economic cost. So currently, oral devices are one method of treatment. This is the current market where oral appliances are delivered through dentists. Success rates are only in the order of about 55% with mandibular advancement alone. This is from the literature. Surgery is another option, but not a good one due to the trauma and risk and low success rates. There's a range of different types of surgery there, and some of them are quite low. Maxillomandibular advancement, which is really cutting and the jaw apart and stitching it up, is in the order of 87%, obviously quite traumatic surgery. And of course CPAP devices, the gold standard that's been around a long time, is 83% success rate. So why are there 80% of patients out of care? There are poor acceptance of current treatment options, either because of the low success rate, but in the case of CPAP, it's really this quite high non-compliance. People just don't like wearing those full face masks, and of course the positive air pressure is quite uncomfortable as well. So it's estimated that 50% of patients are non-compliant with CPAP therapy at 1 year, and that in fact grows as the years go by. So there's a risk of failure with respect to oral appliances, and it's still relatively expensive for the patient and the healthcare system to deliver these. So it's about having not only higher success rates, but decreasing that risk of failure, and a lack of awareness of some treatments, and of course a lack of awareness that they've in fact got have the disease in the first place. So the market outlook, this graph is really showing a combination of oral appliances plus CPAP masks. So that's that bridging the gap between the two. So we've combined the two existing markets together, and this is without the CPAP machine. So as we move towards that sleep clinician market, our intention is to use the existing CPAP machines with our CPAP connector. As we mentioned, that's a key goal for next year, is to partner with companies that already have customers in this market. I'll go through some of the background to the technology. This is the device itself. There's a top and bottom section. The bottom section can actually move backwards and forwards depending on the level of advancement the patient requires, and of course that optimization is all about helping to open up the airway, which really only just addresses tongue obstructions alone, and as we mentioned earlier, there's other reasons for causing that collapse of the airway coming from the nose. and of course the soft palate as well. So those nasal obstructions are absolutely key for us, and we believe we're the only device that really can help treat these patients with nasal obstructions, and it is in fact estimated to be around about 50 to 60% of the market. So that airway at the front, the patient can switch to airway breathing really just when required. They can breathe through their nose, and if they have a nasal blockage through the night, they can just switch to that nasal breathing rather than having an obstruction and leading to the prevention of the event. So this is a slide showing really we're bridging the gap between, on the left-hand side, the oral appliances that are typically just delivered by dentists and prescribed to patients at that mild to moderate end of sleep apnea. And then at the other end, there's the CPAP machines. We have technologies that currently are delivered through the dental channel. That's the O2 vent range we have on market today. But of course, our next generation products are going to be once again bridging this gap to the sleep clinicians and allowing us to combine those two markets from oral appliances to CPAP. And our goal then is in fact to grow that market. These are the range of products that are either on the market now or will be in the next month. The ones on the left-hand side all have clearance by the FDA and will be launched through Modern Dental this quarter, and Chris will talk more about that. On the right-hand side are our products coming through, remaining products for the dental channel, being the O2 vent trial device, which is at end stage development. We've got the Combi Bite and these so-called HMEs coming to market in the next 2 years. The Combi Bite is really just for the clinician to make it easier to take records, so they can send those records to us to be able to scan those and 3D print a customised device to the individual patient. So they're really just low class, class 1. So when they're brought to market, it's really an overnight registration in both the US and Australia. These HMEs are sponges that can basically absorb water on exhalation, and of course on inhalation it can also then be released, leading to a reduction in dry mouth for those patients that have that issue. We've also got other innovations coming through. So these are now for the sleep clinician market. So it's a version of the trial device, but specifically for the sleep clinician market, very similar to the trial device for the dental channel, except it has a boil and bite component. So the sleep clinician can just heat them up, goes into the patient's mouth and moulds around the appliance. It is a possibility in the future if strategically it's a wise move to have these as available as an over-the-counter or online option. There's then the CPAP connection, which is clearly combining for the first time oral appliance therapy with our airway with the normal CPAP hoses without the mask. So we have a strong IP position. So we've got 6 patent families that are progressing through the various stages, starting off with the original idea from Chris, which is protecting the novelty of the airway itself. That's our key point of differentiation, leading to the 3D printed designs. We've got specific designs for people with jaw pain for a future product. We've got these titratable devices, both wings and the T device protected. We've got the CPAP connection at a PCT stage, and then the last one is some sensor technology, which is part of the CRC for sleep apnea, which was a recent initiative we'll talk to later in the presentation. So I'd like to hand over to Chris to talk through firstly the modern go-to-market strategy, our future one with respect to sleep clinicians, and then go through some of the clinical results.
Thanks, Neil, and thanks everyone for coming along today. As has been mentioned quite a few times, we've recently entered into a distribution agreement with Modern Dental Group, the largest distributor and manufacturer of custom-made dental prosthetics in the world. It's certainly a huge advantage for us to have access to over 340,000 dentist customers worldwide, with very deep and meaningful relationships with these dentists, and the ability to onboard them through training and customer support at a very high level of service that we could never have achieved on our own. The sleep channel, we are just developing or finishing developing our sleep channel products, and early discussions are underway with a number of parties to partner with to get those products into market as well. As we mentioned, biggest dental group in the world, about 30% of the world market, top 3 in every major economy around the world, with a quarter of the market covered in the US. 70 plus sales and customer service centres, and very high levels of service and training capability, with great brand presence in each of those markets. So being able to work with these guys to get our product out is putting us a long way ahead of where we would have been without them. And incredibly, the way they've engaged or embraced the technology, I think, is something that I probably was a little bit surprised with. They really have taken the ball and run with it, and are very firm believers in the technology and the markets they operate in. I think we've gone through this. They're top 3 by sales volume and revenue. Their customer support teams and their reps on the ground, dozens of reps in each country, with training facilities hardwired through social media outlets, as well as online training portals for dentists and clinicians around the country in each of those continents. And it's their training and their distribution and customer support that gives them the edge. They differentiate themselves from the market on the back of that, particularly in the Australian and US markets, as well as in Europe. And combined with that is their ability to manufacture at a very low cost and in a timely manner. So it really is a double hit for us to have highly scalable, low-cost manufacturing combined with the world's most effective distributor of these products, all in the same relationship. So very important to us, that one. We have been working since we reached an agreement in June to set up the training and the intellectual property within their companies to go and onboard dentists very rapidly and at very low cost and effectively. So we have set up an onboard online training portal for Modern's customers to access. We've also then onboarded them in terms of their knowledge of the products when they discuss it with their customers. We've worked with them to develop tailored marketing communications materials in each of their major markets, and the manufacturing logistics has also been worked out as well. So we are just starting to distribute in Australia through their wholly owned subsidiary Southern Cross Dental, and a launch for distribution in the US we're aiming for before the end of this year. We have been outsourcing manufacturing with them for the last couple of months. Certainly very engaged, they're great to work with. We have a fantastic relationship, whether they like it or not. They hear from me every day. And we spent a lot of time together working out how this is going to get to market and how we can help as many people as possible, and at the same time help to build the clinicians' dental practices and their position in the market for this particular type of technology. We will be pushing into the sleep channel market, as I said, and that will be next year at some stage. We are in discussions at the moment. It's obviously predicated on us bringing to market these sleep channel products, which is the temporary or trial device and the CPAP connection. The CPAP connection, we actually already have a waiting list for patients around the world, and dentists lining up for the CPAP connection to come into market. There was a phenomenal amount of interest when we presented that data in Boston at Sleep 2017 and World Sleep at Prague, as well as the Australasian Sleep Association in Auckland. That combined with the temporary device will give us a significant opportunity in the market to start to bring more patients into care. The 50% of patients that fall out of care are largely those that are using full face masks. And what this combined technology does, it allows us to convert a full face mask wearing patient back to a nasal pillow patient without the straps and without the mask. We can reduce the pressure by 2/3 and the patient can breathe through their mouth while simultaneously receiving CPAP support to maintain the airway. And if you look at the mask market, $3.9 billion, 50% of them are full face masks. That's $1.95 billion with a 50% dropout rate at the end of the first year. That's the current market. If this technology continues to prove up the way it is in clinical trials, then the addressable market may well be another 4 times that size. So we think that's a really exciting competitive advantage for us, and it'll certainly help millions of patients worldwide to receive the care that they deserve. We're engaging with sleep clinicians at the moment. We're engaging with them on a research point of view. We're getting feedback from the key opinion leaders both in Australia and the US and Europe, and the feedback on our new products coming to market has been phenomenal. We have started some very early engagement with DME distributors. We haven't engaged HMOs yet. Having said that, we already have reimbursement in place for all of these products under existing codes, so we don't perceive that to be an issue entering the market. Also home care companies and distributors of CPAPs and retail outlets distributing CPAP. For those stakeholders, they now have another CPAP interface to sell, so it's an increase in revenue for them. They can very likely go back and bring patients into care that are outside of care. And part of the CPAP interface is an oral appliance. So if the patient chooses to remove the CPAP interface from the oral appliance, in effect, we're then converting a CPAP patient to an oral appliance patient. So through that pathway, we're accessing the millions of patients that are outside of care with the ability to offer them improved outcomes, whether they're oral appliance or CPAP patients, and they have complete flexibility to tailor the treatment to optimise their outcome. And I think that's a really important position for us to be in this market with, and it's certainly one that is creating a lot of interest, and we're receiving a lot of attention from sleep physicians on that basis. In terms of validation, we have a clinical trial program underway. We've completed 1 trial, 3 more sponsored trials underway, 2 more sponsored, 1 internal and 2 independent trials. We have around about 50 patients through 4 separate trials at the moment, and the results have been very consistent. We'll have another 100 patients coming off clinical trials between now and the end of first quarter next year. A lot of that data is being analysed at the moment, and it's been very consistent across all trials. Our first trial, we showed that 100% of patients improved their snoring with 82% of complete elimination and 76% response rate, reducing the number of events by half, which are very impressive numbers. Our hypothesis there was that we could treat patients with nasal congestion as well as those without. So to fill you in on what that means is that one of the main reasons patients can't tolerate CPAP is because of nasal obstruction or high nasal resistance, which then increases pressures, pushes the patients onto a full face mask, which is not well tolerated. In terms of oral appliance therapy, nasal obstruction and collapse at the soft palate, these higher level obstructions, are some of the main reasons why patients don't respond to oral appliance therapy as well. The device was invented for myself because I had both of those issues, and after it worked for me I started using it on patients, and I'd treated quite a few patients before this data came in knowing that it worked, but it is nice to see the validation in formal clinical trials to support the original hypothesis and to support our go-to-market across all territories. This data is just starting to come off. We have our first peer-reviewed paper in the Journal of Dental Sleep Medicine mid-year, and that was this one. Since then, we've had 3 more data sets displayed or presented at different sleep conferences. As I said, Sleep 2017 in Boston, World Sleep in Prague, and the Australasian Sleep Association in Auckland. And the message has been consistent across 50 patients on 4 of these studies. We're seeing between a 30 and 50% improvement in outcomes for patients that wear oral appliances or mouth guards. Obviously, that's a significant benefit. In terms of the airway technology, we're showing that we can treat these patients with multiple levels of obstruction as effectively as those which just have tongue-based obstructions. Interestingly, in Boston, there was data presented by Andrew Wellman indicating that only 20% of obstructions in obstructive sleep apnea occur at the tongue base. And so in our messaging to sleep physicians and dentists now, we're explaining that being able to bypass the nose, the soft palate obstruction, and reducing the negative pressures that suck the airway shut by incorporating the airway, we're now addressing all levels of obstruction. This message is starting to resonate with sleep physicians, dentists, and ear, nose and throat surgeons that typically treat these patients. This is the reason why we're seeing an improvement in efficacy within a mouthguard. It's also the reason why we can deliver CPAP through nasal pillows to patients that would have ordinarily been on a full face mask. And that is how we access the $3.9 billion full face market, with a very competitive position for at least 50% of that, in which patients are currently on full face masks and falling out of care at the rate of 50% at 1 year. So we can now show that we can treat these patients with multiple levels of obstructions. It's improving the efficacy of oral appliance therapy, and then for the final patients that still need help with some positive air pressure support, we can do that without a mask at ultra low pressure. We've reduced pressures by 2/3, and we're doing it while allowing the patient to breathe through their mouth and no straps around their head. So we think this is a very compelling advantage that we can bring to market to help the sleep physicians bring patients into care, to reduce long-term health economic burdens returns and also to increase shareholder value. And at the end of the day, it's both of these things. If we don't help patients, we can't increase shareholder value. Fortunately, the clinical trial program is ticking both of that boxes at the moment. This is our clinical trial program. We have a 3-year program with the CRCP that's funded by a $2.95 million government grant. And that's 180 patients over 3 years, validating the CPAP technology and then developing a micro-PAP as well as some sensibles and wearable technology. Some of that data I've just shown you is off the first 7 patients, the first 4 and then another 7 patients off that study. In Perth, we're doing a study to validate the airway, looking at how it's affecting the physiology, and some very interesting results there that has certainly engaged the world leaders. And both of those studies are being run by world leaders in upper airway physiology. And the first data out of the Perth study is what we presented in Auckland, which showed a 30% improvement in efficacy for oral appliance therapy. The Neuro study at the top there showed that we reduced pressures by 2/3 and negated the need for a mask. And the Perth study also indicates that we're bypassing multiple levels of obstruction. Brisbane study's internal. We're going through that data at the moment. I've probably still got another 10 patients to get through, but very similar data to what we've seen elsewhere. And then we have 2 independent studies as well that are underway at Monash University and at Green Slopes Hospital in Brisbane. So very consistent results supporting our hypothesis and supporting our go-to-market. The messaging now is very clear as to where these devices are indicated, and the response from sleep physicians and dentists has been very encouraging both in Australia and in the US, particularly those experts in the field who know intimately this physiology. So I'll hand back to Neil now for a wrap-up. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Chris. I'd just like to finish up with a couple of slides just outlining our key achievements for the last year, and then an indication of some of the achievements that we'll be planning and talking about this time next year. So an overview, we've signed that agreement with Modern Dental, absolutely key to enable us to get our innovative dental appliance products out to the market. We've made some new product development inroads with respect to these CPAP connections or combination therapy, and together with the O2 vent trial devices will be able to be delivered through that new sleep clinician channel. We have a manufacturing setup with certification according to worldwide standards, so that's ISO 13485, and also the Medical Device Single Audit Program, which has really de-risks our manufacturing moving forward. Chris went through the additional clinical evidence. You could see there that growing body is up to 50 patients, and we're anticipating there'll be another 50 in the coming 6 months. On the product side, we have the regulatory clearance for the O2 Vent T and the O2 Vent W, which has come onto the market in the last year, and the O2 Vent T was early in the financial year, and the W later in the financial year. We've also made some progress with respect to the China market, a large unmet market need in China for this type of product, and we'll be advancing that as time and resources allow. We received, as Chris mentioned, this CRCP grant, which is really bringing together industry, researchers, which is CSIRO, Western Sydney University, and of course the clinical group at Neuro, and it's a great initiative from the federal government. We're very thankful for that support, and of course listing on the ASX was July last year. So our goal, the first one is important. Our goal is to become cash positive in 2019. We're focusing on that dental channel now, and with the sleep clinician channel coming on board sometime later in 2018, I think it's a good chance that we'll be able to reach that goal. Key success measures to be looked at over the next year. Of course, generating sales through that dental channel, that's Modern Dental. generating sales or initial sales in the second half of the calendar year in 2018 for that sleep clinician channel. That's the combination therapy with CPAP and the trial device. Ongoing clinical work that's sort of winding down the current clinical trials, but we're likely to be continuing with further clinical work more as suppliers of devices rather than full sponsors, and of course really complete that O2 vent product range for that sleep clinician channel. So I'd now like to actually thank a number of people. Firstly, starting with the board, we've had incredible support over the last few years. So that's our executive directors. That's Mel Bridges, our chairman, and Sue McClellan, both here today. Steve has done a great job as company secretary as well. And of course, my close colleague Chris Hart, we've been through a lot together since the start of this. But there's a lot more to Oventus than just a board and executive directors. We have a great team of people that are highly dedicated to help us really reach these goals of bringing innovative technology to market to really help millions of people worldwide. And of course, last but not least is of course the investors who have really come on board and supported us through a number of capital raisings in the last year. And I can tell you, you've got a great team there doing our best to add value to your investment.